My name is Michaela Colley. I'm the Executive Director of Organic Seed Alliance, and I'll be today's session moderator. We have three panelists that will be presenting today on the topic of organic seed. But I'd like to start out by introducing the topic a little bit and get us thinking about what are we talking about when we talk about organic seed systems. Seed is the primary input in all agricultural systems. And in organic agriculture, genetics that are tailored to organic farming holds great promise in addressing our key production challenges: weeds, pests, disease, nutrient availability. It holds the potential to optimize our on-farm ecosystem interactions while also closing the yield gap with conventional farming. We're going to hear more about the strides we've made in organic plant breeding later today and in some of the sessions tomorrow. But organic seed represents more than higher yields. So what is at stake? In 2002, the National Organic Program implemented the organic seed rule, but it was a key tipping point in gaining recognition that organic seed is part of a farming operation, and therefore organic seed is critical to the integrity and success of organic farming. So how do we address the full supply chain of organic seed? Who owns our seed and who will grow our seed? After more than a decade, we still do not have an adequate supply of organic seed to support organic farming. Seed production information is held tightly within the seed industry, and we need appropriate knowledge and technology as well as capital investments to ensure a high-quality organic seed supply. Organic farmers remain dependent on supply from some seed companies that do not represent their interests in mind. They remain dependent on varieties that will never be available organically, either because the inbreds are too weak to be produced organically or because the organic market is too small for the seed company to bother. Furthermore, if seed is truly a part of a whole organic system, then it is important to consider the environmental and human impacts of our input choices. Organic farmers remain dependent on seed sources that represent upstream pollution associated with conventional seed production, and at times seed produced with low-cost foreign labor. So again, consider the topic of organic seed. What is at stake? It's my pleasure to introduce our panel of presenters today, starting with Jared Zystro. Jared's going to speak on the results of the State of Organic Seed Survey. Jared is OSA's Research and Education Assistant Director. He has a master's degree in plant breeding and plant genetics from the University of Wisconsin, currently working on his PhD at Wisconsin while on staff at OSA. Jared's worked in the organic seed industry for over 10 years, managing seed production at 2 farms and conducting research and education projects with OSA. In his work at OSA, he manages our regional development in California, conducts participatory breeding projects and variety trials, and teaches farmers about seed production and plant breeding at workshops, conferences, and field days. Jared is currently residing in the coastal town of Arcata, California with his wife Lisa and his son Toby. We also have Alex Lyon, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand. Alex will be presenting Seed Needs and Challenges, Interviews with Wisconsin Organic Vegetable Growers. Alex Lyon is PhD candidate in the Nelson Institute for Environmental Science at UW-Madison and a research assistant in the Organic Sustainable Research Program run by Professor Aaron Silva. Alex's research explores the practices and priorities of organic farmers in the upper Midwest in relation to seed and plant breeding, and how participatory variety trials can help address these needs. In 2012, she helped launch the Student Organic Seed Symposium, an annual event aimed at supporting graduate student involvement in organic seed and plant breeding. She earned her MS in agroecology from UW-Madison in 2008. Lastly, we have Lisa Schlesinger. She's going to speak on pollen drift, reframing the biotechnology liability debate. Lisa Schlesinger is a postdoctoral legal research associate at the University of Illinois in the Department of Agricultural and Consumer Economics. Her research interests include the legal aspects of sustainable agriculture and food law, including issues arising from direct farm sales, aspects of the farm business, community-supported agriculture, and the impact of biotechnology on organic and conventional farms. She also teaches food law to undergraduate students. So with that, please welcome our three panelists, and I'll invite Jared to come up here and begin.
Thank you, Michaela. So I have the pleasure of being the first of our three panelists to speak, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about our State of Organic Seed project at Organic Seed Alliance. One of our projects has been the State of Organic Seed report. This is a project that is an ongoing monitoring of the health, the status of organic seed systems throughout the country, looking at challenges that exist in building and sustaining organic seed systems, in developing seed that's appropriate for organic farmers, and identifying opportunities and solutions to these challenges, and ultimately implementing those solutions. In 2010, here at La Crosse, we had the first State of Organic Seed Symposium, and in conjunction with that symposium, we also conducted a farmer organic seed survey, did research into contamination, seed industry concentration, intellectual property issues, and released a report identifying the key challenges and mapping out the solutions that we might be able to implement. 5 years later, now in 2015, we're updating the report, looking at how far we've come, where we still need to go, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. There's a few different components that go into this report. We have fundamental research looking through public funding for organic breeding and seed production, looking at contamination, intellectual property, and concentration issues facing organic farmers. We are conducting listening sessions, organic seed listening sessions at conferences like this throughout the country to hear from organic farmers and other stakeholders about the key priorities. And we also have an organic farmer seed survey, which is what I'm going to be reporting out to you all about right now. The other aspects of this, the listening sessions, research on funding, contamination, will be continuing, and our entire report is going to be brought together this year and published in the winter of 2015-2016. But the survey, I can provide a little bit of our preliminary results now. So this was a survey sent out to certified organic farmers throughout the country. We sent this out in 2014 and through our own mailing list, through partners such as certifiers and producer co-ops, and received back 1,368 responses from all over the country. This is an example of where they came back from, including, you can see, strong representation from the Midwest. One of the things that we did this time to address, in 2010, one of the concerns that we heard from people was, well, if you send this out to everyone and you send it out through your partnering organizations, will the people coming back, sending the responses back, be only the people who are extremely passionate about organic seed, who are essentially, friends to organic seed research, and how skewed will those results be? So what we tried to do to address that this time around is, in addition to sending out the survey through our usual venues, because we still wanted to hear back from as many farmers as we could, we also went through the NOP database and picked a completely random sample of 800 farmers from that database and contacted them directly, and made an extra effort to get a higher response rate from those farmers that were randomly selected that may or may not have ever heard of Organic Seed Alliance. So we sent out, contacted 800 farmers. In that case, we heard back from about 200 of them. So in this case, total response rate, you could say 1,368 represents a little less than 10% of organic farms in the U.S. Of our sample group, we got 200 back out of 800, so about 25% back in our sample group. So we heard back from a greater percent in our sample group because we put in extra effort, and it was also people that, again, may not be no Organic Seed Alliance or even know any of our partnering organizations. So I haven't. I'll just tell you this now. The results I'm reporting right now are based on the all respondents. However, I have gone through and compared the results that I've seen from the sample group with the results from all respondents, and although I haven't done the statistics to see whether or not we could consider them statistically significantly different or not, what I can see is in general it's within 1% or 2% or at most 5% in terms of the responses to our questions. So the responses tend to be very much in line between whether is the overall respondents or a more controlled and higher response rate based sample. So I feel pretty good in that reporting that our responses are fairly representative. So we asked a number of different questions, and I'm not going to report all of them out to you right now, but I'm going to give you a few highlights. We asked a number of questions about demographics, how large the farm was, how long they've been farming, what kind of crops they're growing, and in order to get a feeling for who exactly we're talking to and how their responses might differ based on those demographics. However, most of what I'm going to be reporting to you is based on the respondents as a whole. This is all basically fresh, hot off the presses. I'm still in the midst of analysis right now, so I will be breaking everything down by the different demographics to get a sense of how things vary. But one of the questions we asked was, how are farmers obtaining their seed? And a couple of interesting things to point out, I would say, in addition to the expected sources, including accessing commercial varieties, by seed catalogs, through websites, or through sales representatives. You can see that of the respondents, about 20% of the seed that they use was from their own production. And I think this is really interesting, and I think is relevant going forward in the survey as we look at how intellectual property restrictions impact those farmers that want to be able to produce their own seed. The other thing that I wanted to highlight here is that about 11% of the seed that farmers were using is coming from their processor or buyer. And again, this is something that can impact seed purchasing decisions. In the 2009 data, and again, I haven't broken it down in 2015 yet, but in 2009, one of the things that we saw was that of the farmers that were larger organic farms producing on larger acreage, particular vegetable growers on larger acreage, a reason that stood out for them not using organic seed that we didn't see as much with other farmers was because their processor or buyer was supplying seed, was stipulating in the contract, this is the variety you have to grow, and that wasn't organic seed. And so I think, looking at that piece, we can see potentially, as I dig into the data this year, how much that's impacting organic seed usage. I want to now look at a little bit of changes that we see from 2009 to 2014 in overall organic seed usage. And in general, one of the things that I'm happy to report is that we have relatively positive results here. So if we look at the average vegetable acreage that's planted to organic seed, we saw that respondents back in 2009, about 55% of their acres, they were using organic vegetable seed to plant. And in 2014, we saw that jump up to almost 70% of their acres they were using to plant that. Now, someone's going to have a question, I'm sure, which is that, well, this is the average across all farms. This hasn't been weighted yet by scale, and so I'm going to. This is something that these are the preliminary results, and so I'm going to be looking and weighing this by scale to see if larger farms are using more or less organic seed. From 2009, what we saw was that there was a difference, that larger field crop producers tended to use more organic seed than smaller field crop producers. On the flip side, larger vegetable crop producers tended to use less organic seed. So I'm going to see, again, I haven't looked at that for 2014 yet. What you can see in terms of sort of how that shifted from 2009 to 2014, this is kind of breaking it down into categories by percent acreage planted to organic seed. And what you can see is that the big shift here is that from 2009 to 2014, we see this jump in farmers that are using 100% organic seed. So, back in 2009, we had, comparing this, there was about close to 10% more farmers were using just 1 to 10% of their seed to plant their vegetable acres was organic, whereas now we see that number has gone down, and correspondingly we see an increase in farmers that are using 100% organic seed. So these are all positive results. Breaking it down by vegetable crops, we see that there's some variation depending on what crops people are growing. So you can see that lettuce and potatoes and the alliums, farmers were accessing and choosing to plant more of their acreage with organic seed. In comparison, we can see that squash and sweet corn were closer to 60% of the squash and sweet corn acreage was being planted to organic seed. So there's definitely some variation here depending on what vegetable crops people were growing. When we look at field crops, in 2009, there was already, what we find is that field crop producers in general tend to use more organic seed than vegetable crop producers. But we still are seeing an increase now from 72% in 2009 to close to 78% in 2014. And again, a decent amount of that shift seems to be that there's fewer people planting no organic seed and more people planting 100% organic seed. Within field crops, for most field crops, it was around this 80% mark where that was being planted to organic seed. The one that stood out here was alfalfa was slightly lower, it was 68%. Another positive result that I was seeing from the survey was we asked farmers to rate what problems were they having with organic seed. What were some of the issues that they saw, and we asked them to rate it as either, not a problem or a slight problem, a moderate problem, a severe problem. And when we compare the 2009 results with the 2014 results, what we find is kind of an across-the-board decrease in the level of in problems that are considered moderate to severe. So 4% fewer farmers in 2014 considered germination and emergence to be a moderate to severe problem with organic seed. 5% fewer respondents considered varietal integrity to be a moderate to severe problem. 5% fewer considered contamination by weed seed to be a moderate to severe problem. And on down the line here where we see a overall decrease in farmers' concerns about the quality of organic seed. So I take this as, again, a trend in the right direction where farmers are using more organic seed and they seem to be less concerned about the quality of organic seed. So why are farmers still not buying organic seed? When we asked the farmers' reasons, the reasons that they listed as moderate to significant reasons, the top ones that we see coming out of here, we look at insufficient quantity of seed. 56% of respondents said that that was a moderate to significant reason for them not to be purchasing organic seed. 50% said, well, I'm saving my own seed, so I don't need to be purchasing organic seed. So this is, I would consider this to be a positive thing there. But 41% listed price as a reason. Obviously, when you're talking about the certification standards, price is not supposed to be a reason, but when we are asking farmers anonymously, a significant minority did list that as a moderate to significant reason. But the largest reason by far, 79%, said that just a lack of a specific variety not available, was a moderate to significant reason. If that's why they're not buying organic seed, why do they want to be buying organic seed? We asked them some of their motivations for why they buy organic seed. The largest reason, of course, fairly straightforward, was it's a requirement of organic certification. You know, we can see almost 80% agree or strongly agree with that statement. Many of farmers want their seed supplier farming in a similar system as mine. If they're growing organically, they'd like to see their seed produced organically as well. We see, you know, about 50 or 62% of farmers strongly agree with that statement. These got cut off here, but this one here says, I want my organic seed to support organic breeding efforts. So we threw this one in there, and I was really surprised to see, frankly, that this was actually the reason of all of these four. We see that 81% of farmers agree or strongly agree that they are, you know, one of their motivations for buying organic seed is that they want to be supporting organic breeding efforts. And finally, this last question that's supposed to say, I use my organic seed as a marketing tool, was not really, didn't tend to be a very important reason for farmers. So we also asked farmers kind of some values-based questions around organic seed, and we found that 85% of them agreed or strongly agreed that organic seed is important in maintaining the integrity of organic food production. And also 85% agreed or strongly agreed that varieties bred for organic systems are important to the overall success of organic agriculture. So here are some of the again, very preliminary takeaway conclusions that we can see from this first pass analysis of our farmer organic seed survey. You can see that in general, we're seeing more organic seed used since when we looked at this in 2009. We're seeing more satisfaction with organic seed quality. We're seeing the biggest need is we need more varieties available organically, and the varieties that more of the varieties that farmers need to be planting available organically, and we need it to be available in larger quantities. We also see that most organic producers that responded to this survey fundamentally want to support, either with their purchases or just as a value, they support organic breeding and the concept of producing their seed under organic production systems. So moving forward, for the rest of this year, I'm going to be diving deeper into this data, looking at it across different demographics, asking some questions, correlations between these responses. We'll also be looking at organic seed and breeding funding that's taken place over the past 5 years. And we'll be examining issues around concentration, contamination, intellectual property. And our final report, the next edition of the State of Organic Seed Report, will include recommendations for what we need to be doing to move us through the next 5 years, will be released this winter in time for the Organic Seed Growers Conference, which I want to pitch will be happening February 4th through 6th in Corvallis.